Hey guys, welcome back to History of Vision Success. And today I have got a completely new topic for you based on Mussolini in Italy and the fascist state. So I know that this is a topic in the Edexcel A-level course. I'm sure this information will also apply to other courses under other exam boards. And what we're going to run through is Mussolini's relationship with the church. So I've done this in a way that I'm hoping will be really helpful for you, essentially based off an essay plan to give you the key conclusions, the key questions, and the key paragraph steps that you need in order to approach this question. So what are the key questions really that you need to answer? Because it's all well and good knowing that you're looking at the theme of Mussolini and the church, but you need to be able to dissect exactly what they want you to know from that information. So really what I believe are the key questions are, first of all, how far did the church and state work together? And second of all, how far can we say the church was an ally of the state? I think if you can answer both of those questions, you can essentially answer any question that the exam board could ask you on this topic. Now, after that, within that, there are three kind of sub questions I think you also need to know. Now, the first being, why did Mussolini change his attitude towards the Catholic Church and what policies are evidence of that? What extent was the relationship between the church and the fascists changing over this period? And what role did the Pope take in this relationship? And what extent did he oppose the regime kind of personally? In terms of a conclusion, if you want the conclusions to my two main questions, you're going to need to watch this video and my next video, part 2, on this. And at the very end, I'm going to give you my conclusions fully written out in kind of really good language that you can literally replicate. But I am going to, at this point, give you a kind of an overview in terms of a timeline of what's happening in this relationship. So in the 1920s, we see Mussolini moving to improve relations with the church, and both sides gain significantly from not entering into open confrontation. I'll explain why that is in a moment. 1929 I see as a seminal moment, which means a turning point. It's the Lateran Pax, and they hugely increase Mussolini's popularity and strength. And you'll find out again why that is if you keep watching. And that means that he's in a far stronger position by the 1930s, and he's able to move away and start to clash a little bit with the church. He no longer needs them in quite the same way that he did. And therefore, in this period, we see greater tensions emerging. Now, in terms of how I would write this up and how I would formulate an argument, my first point would be that, as I said, in the 1920s, Mussolini needs the church. He needs it to increase his stability and his popularity. So he has to foster good relationships with the Roman Catholic Church. They are an incredibly powerful institution in Italy, and the Catholic Church was deeply involved in many aspects of Italian life. They influence customs and morality, especially in rural areas, and they control networks such as welfare, education, and finance. In addition, an agreement with the church will look good internationally. And if you've had a look at Mussolini's foreign policy, one of his aims was to increase his international reputation as a great statesman. So being allied with the church is going to aid him in that. It's going to be favorable. It's also going to favor him in terms of, in the eyes of the Italian conservative elites. It will make him look less radical, less revolutionary. Therefore, they're more likely to support him. In addition, the church is also a political threat to him. They have their own party, I'm not going to say this very well, but the Popolari, and they have been competing with the fascist movement for political power for a couple of years now. So it's in every, he needs the church. He needs to work with it. At this point, he's not strong enough to oppose them. Therefore, he compromises, okay? And what we see is actually a very unique watershed moment. Now, to understand this, you need to understand a little bit about Italy as a country. Now, you should know that Italy obviously unified not so long ago. and that the papal states felt they had lost out significantly in that unification. And until this point, the papal states have not recognized a single government of Italy. They don't recognize the political government, they don't recognize the unification and the annexation that happened, and they are very, very resentful towards the state. So it's within that situation that Mussolini is acting. Now, he's the first Italian leader to reach an agreement with the Catholic Church. So in that sense, it's a very important moment. He's helping to reduce tensions between the church and state. And the way that he does this is as follows. So he brings many benefits for the clergy. For example, the Bank of Rome is essentially saved by the state funding. Most of the assets of the Catholic Church are held in the Bank of Rome. So he essentially helps them from not going bankrupt when the bank fails, essentially. So that's really good. He also begins to increase clergy salaries, and he ensures they are exempt from tax. He grants 3 million lire to restore damaged churches across Italy. He reinstates religious education in elementary schools, and he also ensures that Milan's Catholic University, the University of the Sacred Heart, is given official recognition. He restores the crucifix to Italian schoolrooms and courts, and he kind of enters into a moral crusade alongside the church. So we see tightening of laws relating to divorce and abortion. We see gambling and drinking being discouraged, and swearing becomes an offence, and the wearing of short skirts and makeup is discouraged. In response, he also has his children baptized kind of on his own accord. So what he does for himself, he has his children baptized in 1923. He has a religious marriage ceremony to his wife Rachel, or Rochelle, sorry. They were already married, but he had a state wedding. So he then enters into a religious wedding to show his approval of the church, essentially. That's in 1926. And he openly disapproves of contraception, also pushing the idea that women should stay at home and look after the family. Now, in response, the Pope withdrew from the Popolare in 1923, and he kind of takes away the political nature of the church. And by 1926, Mussolini has forced the Popolare to dissolve completely. That leads us to point 3, this kind of turning point, that is the Lateran Pact, this lasting agreement. So this brought him stability and popularity throughout Italy. It was a huge moment. It was a defining moment in the relationship between the church and state. You know, it really was the signal of an end to the conflict between the church and the state. Since 1870, as I said, the Catholic Church had refused to recognize the legal and political legitimacy of united Italy since the seizure of these papal states. So it's absolutely huge, you know, for Mussolini, but also for Italian history. It's a big seminal moment. It's a watershed point. It's a turning point. And therefore, you know, let's get into what actually was the Lateran Pact. So the Lateran Pact, first of all, stated that the Vatican City had been established as an independent state in Rome. Second, there was a financial agreement, compensation to the Catholic Church for the land lost during the Italian unification process. The church received 750 million lire in this and 1 billion lire in state bonds. The third point was the Concordat, which meant that church administration and religious structures would remain separate and independent from state institutions. Religious education was compulsory in state schools. Teachers and textbooks had to be approved by the Catholic Church. And the Pope was given the right to appoint all bishops, although the government was allowed to veto anyone who was an enemy of fascism. So you can see the unity starting to develop there. Now, in addition, they also had the right to censorship over books, newspapers, and films. All marriages had to be religious. Catholic Action, which was the Catholic youth group, was recognized as an official organization and was the only non-fascist organization to hold this position. And in response, kind of the Pope agreed that the clergy could not join political parties. So this was the first government to succeed in negotiating with the church since unification. Now, I'm going to stop this video here. And if you make sure you subscribe and tune in, you can catch the next part 2, where I'm going to go through the benefits to Mussolini, the impact of the Lateran Pacts, and then I'm going to start explaining the breakdown of this relationship in the 1930s and why it started to fall apart. So make sure you tune in, make sure you catch that episode, and I hope this has been helpful to you.